The last spell is a Sophian tactic about hordes of monsters and a handful of heroes, with diabolical complexity and a heavy soundtrack. It's a bastard child of Final Fantasy tactics and their billions, masterfully combine classic and modern, ruthless and internal magnetism. Get ready for the darkest night and the thickest fog. Fan studio Ishtar Games, formerly known as CCCP, was founded in 2005 and had previously released two well-received strategies, Dead in Bermuda and Dead in Vinland. The last spell, their latest creation, is a turn-based tactic game with elements of tower defense, city buildings and roguelike. The game has been in early access for almost 2 years, being refined and balanced. Graphic in the last spell is two-dimensional pixel, without frills and innovation, but strict and perfectly conveys the tragic atmosphere of a dying world. Studio artists have repeatedly proved that can draw very beautiful. Here, however, the last was different. The emphasis on strategy and mechanics, minimalism and lack of inherence in the gameplay. Events take place in the world after a devastating cataclysm, when the magic orbs left behind a purple fog, turning everything alive into a ruthless, endless scourges. The only hope left was to hold off the last settlement for a certain number of days, so the group of mages could receive a cleansing last spell. A team of 3 unfortunately saved the dilapidated towns with an altar and sources sacrificing their lives in the center of it. At the beginning of the run is Select City and Omens, greatly collected permanent spells that simply game or create special condition, will increase mana or grant abilities. Then a team of 3 characters is generated, a melee fighter, an archer, and a mage with a random name, appearance, characteristic, and traits. Traits are a set of negatives and positives. For example, an alcoholic is less likely to hit in close combat, a wizard dealt extra magic damage. Importantly, in the last spell, the class is determined by the weapon being carried. An axe turned into a warrior, a crossbow into a ranger, a staff into a mage. These underdogs need to be turned into killing machines, or the pack will turn them into ministant in a few nights. Gameplay is broken up into phases. When the sun shines in the sky starts the first production. The player uses the currency materials to build walls and barricades, install defensive weapons and traps. Heroes grow in levels, improve characteristic and acquire special traits. And this is not without capitalism, it's about survival, but everything is done in business. Despite gaining the last hope of the post-apocalyptic planet, for gold to buy items mined in buildings or shops. Equipment is placed in the approximate slot in the traditional RPG inventory and displayed on pixel directories. Buildings are also erected and improved. New soldiers are purchased and items are created. Another resource is workers who perform building activation and depend on the number of houses built. For example, get gold from a mine or clear rubble. During the placement phase, you must choose the cells in the direction from which the army of creatures will come, nearly hoping that the attack will be able to survive. The main events take place in the night during the attack phase, when the terrifying creatures checks how effectively their defenses are built. Out of the fog emerges the dozen of various wild creatures that will break into the center of the city, smashing the barriers and exterminating the living. The horde moves in a single wave from one or more sides, and the focus should not be only individual foe, but on the cooperation of heroes to quickly destroy the crowd. For example, massive damage is inflicted, and then likely are mopped up by a crossband with a multi-strike. The goal of the night phase is to save mages trying to cast the last spell, and any sacrifice is good, including the death of pumped-up adventures. Once the bidding is complete, the player will receive rewards that depend on the number of monsters destroyed and the level of panic of the inhabitants that occurs when the horde gets too deep into the settlement. A continuous series of victories with the killing of the final boss on the final night, opens the next location with increased difficulty. Battles with bosses that are particularly focused and accompanied by a continuous stream of minions are memorable and can break the spirit of the wake, especially after a few unsuccessful spurts. If the Undead tear the mages apart, the run begins again with other first-level heroes, and the preservation of the technology achieved. Interest is maintained by the constant updating of gameplay. The more attempts are made, the more varied and slightly easier each sequence one becomes. There are two famous supreme forces watching the action. The creature of the mist, the purple spirit, exchange their essence but essence for reinforcement and omens obtained in battle. The light one creates and gives the same for the completing requirements. Creature communicate with readers and will help the specially diligent greatly. The player is given plenty of tools of successfully towards an attack, but the characteristic component of roguelike's randomness has gone nowhere. Many elements are randomized, from item to ability given out. There are items when only a miracle can save a situation, and it happens and you rejoice. But more often than not, victory is carefully considered combination of action, and like in chess, one wrong move will lead to the collapse of the entire race. The heavy, percussive metalcore soundtrack was written by the famous French multi-instrumental Remy, the algorithm Gallego. Fantastically sinister compositor wonderfully emphasizes the spirit of despair. The last spell is a reminiscent of a fork from a self-development book, and the player's job is to eat the efficient piece of peace, cheering off moments of bitterness, of defeat and sweetness of triumph, learning mechanics and think about working characters build. It's best to give up the idea of an easy walk right away. It's a journey at least 60 hours, and there are 6 levels of Apocalypse with difficulty modifier, which will appeal to crazy hardcore player who plan to settle in here for months of real life. The cornerstone of the last spell is an asymmetrical tactical imbalance, with any of handful of warriors facing off against hundreds of dead men. The game's depth lurks in a multiple of systems, including construction, character customization and planning, tactical combat, and inventory management. Despite the simple graphic, the level design and environments are thoughtful, and the project unfolds greatly. But unfortunately, the game breaks the roguelike structure that many competitors in the genre can handle. The possibility of winning on the first try is not zero, but tends to the fatigue. You have to play and lose, accumulating gains in a bunch of runs to make subsequent games a little more stable. The last spell is a toad, not a quack, and will break quite a few days and evenings. It is taught on the player's time, but in return offer to act as a deliverer of an agonist word, and most likely to die again.